Hey everybody, Mike with Games Play Badly, and today on Session Zero, I have a whole crew of people for you to meet. It is Tabletop Journeys, and they are on the channel today to talk about a brand new project that they're working on that has to do with how to enhance your TTRPG play. And that's all about factions. Whether you want to join one, create one, have your players join one, need some flavor, whatever that is, they have it. So stick around. That interview starts now. Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, we're awesome. How are you?
Excellent.
Fantastic. We have a ring packed full of people today.
Yeah. There's a few of us over here.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm not small. I mean, I take up a lot of space.
True.
Yeah. Well, you are all with Tabletop Journeys. Why don't you go around and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Josh Newton. I'm from Tabletop Journeys. I do a lot of the back end technical work on the podcast and do like layout for our books and stuff like that.
Hi, I'm Lee Wanika. I fancy myself one of the idea guys for our various content creation and full of all kinds of color commentary on our pods.
And I'm Glenn Myers, the third head of our three-headed dragon here at Tabletop Journeys, which we have this joking side shtick that the Traveler is, in fact, a three-headed dragon. That's the three of us. But anyway, moving on. And I am a maker. That's what I call myself, because I don't just write. I don't just craft. I make things. It's what I love. It's what I do, from content to spreadsheets. As long as I'm breathing new life into it, I'm a happy dude.
That's awesome. Well, you guys are on because you have an exciting new project that you're working on. Why doesn't someone tell me all about that?
Oh, sure. Who wants to dive in?
Josh, take us there, buddy.
All right, cool. Yeah. So we are, first of all, thank you very much for having us on, Mike. We really appreciate the time. We are just about to go ahead and launch our second Kickstarter. We had a super successful Kickstarter last year for our heroic subclasses of the multiverse book. So our fourth book now is going to be coming out on Kickstarter. The campaign launches on September 28th, and this is going to be the Traveler's Guide to Factions. It's 9 separate factions with player options and NPC, big bad options, that kind of thing. Allow you to go ahead and kind of play them on both sides of the screen. And we're really excited. It's going to be a narrative heavy book, which is really what we love doing. We love telling stories.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's really, for, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but for a variety of reasons, we're looking to do something a little bit more system agnostic. But it's also going to have kind of rules for D&D 5e, because that's still our bread and butter, as well as some other systems if we hit some stretch goals. So.
Yeah, I got the privilege of seeing some of the beginnings of everything as you sent me over various documents with various factions. I'm looking over here because I have a list of factions that I was thinking of. One of them, like, these names are awesome. What is the Soul Society? Which just, yeah, I'm going to tell you, that hits me.
People of an age.
Right here in my soul.
Right.
Yeah. The Outriders League, the Warp and Weft. There's very, very creative names, but kind of insightful into what these factions are about. And so what you're basically bringing to the table is flavor. And so you're bringing some, as you mentioned, narrative heavy pieces. So that way people don't necessarily have to start from scratch, or if they're stumped or they want to add a component to their adventures that they don't already have. You have 9 of them to start with. Who knows with stretch goals if there might be more.
So, yeah, I mean, that's something that we have talked about. And sorry, Glenn, I saw you were going to go ahead and fire in there. So we're not so much, stretch goals may or may not introduce new factions. That's kind of still something that's kind of banging around. But what we're really hoping, and one of the pieces that was super successful in our last book, was if we hit the stretch goal for adventure starters. Because we're going to be trotting out these factions. We're going to have a bunch of like rules and narrative to play them throughout various ages of time and everything like that. And then if we hit the stretch goal that I'm talking about, actually a 10-page adventure that you can run with this faction, either against this faction or with this faction as part of your party, to go ahead and kick off a campaign on the larger scope. So that's one thing that we're really excited about.
Right.
That's
So
awesome.
ideally you'll be able to drag and drop any of these factions into your settings, or one, two, whichever ones speak to you and your players and your plot. And it'll come complete with not just the story hooks. And once we hit all the stretch goals, and by the time we get to story hook stretch goals, we'll have hit stretch goals for more NPCs, and it'll have blank stat blocks.
Hmm.
So overall, it should just really be ready to go. Pick it up, put it down, make a few adjustments, and you're ready to run with it. But on top of that, one of the chapters we're most excited to include is, as we are learning more and more about designing factions and trying to bring them to life, and what details and pieces and parts to put in them, we're also writing our guide to how to create factions. So there should also be a chapter in there talking about how we did it, so that if you want to take what we've done and create something of your own, you'll see the way that we went through and the steps that we followed to craft your own factions too. And I'm hoping that people will find a lot of value in that as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things I noticed, that it was from the way that I was looking at it, everything was kind of templated. So you're looking at, these are the things that are necessary to kind of flesh out a faction. Motivations, where they're from, all this other stuff. So that's great that you're going to have something so that people can build their own. Because obviously, as RPG players, ttrpg players, we all have our own sense of imagination, I hope. And it's nice to be able to have someone guide you through creating some of these more complicated pieces.
Yes, absolutely. I know when we started really talking in greater detail about this project, and the history of this goes back to our very first project. There were ideas that didn't fit that project, or that were like, we need to add this. There's a really cool gem here, but it's not quite ready. Let's hold on to this and set it aside, and then we'll get back to it. And as each project has come out and as time has gone, we've done more writing until, like, this is the book we're doing. Once we got to that stage, and we started looking at it, we really looked at the fact is, the three of us are storytellers primarily. We are
Mhm.
players as well, but we are primarily storytellers. We're very close to that. If it weren't for each other's games, we would be very close to being forever GMs and storytellers.
I was about to say, to escape that fate,
Yeah,
we would love to play all in the same game together at the same
yeah,
table
yeah,
sometime. Just
yeah.
for those
Impossible.
storytellers out there that want to host
Yeah,
us.
well, we are doing it on one live stream. The streams of Spiro, so shameless plug. So we have that going for us, but we essentially said, okay, as a storyteller, what are the things that we would want to bring into our world? Some of these actually come from games that we have run. Actually, most of these come from games we've run. Others are straight brand new ideas for this project, but quite a few are actually from games we've run, fine tuned, uh, professionalized, if you will, so that
Sure.
it's a usable tool for other people more than scratch notes that we can just trot out and improvise, right? But we also wanted to make something that'd be useful to players. Too many things in our TTRG space are clearly defined as just for players, just for GMs, and I'm not a fan of that. As a
Right.
player, when I go into another game, I like backstory. I like meat and potatoes on this plate. It's like, don't give me just an appetizer as a player. I want the whole daggum deal, right? So we really built these factions with, this is something for a GM to use in a game, to be a patron for players,
Mhm.
but it's also something for the players. They can actually be members of this. They could be the children of members of this. They could be the people petitioning to become one of these. And that's where one of our stretch goals really comes in. If you start getting into these backgrounds and these feats, you could play a character who has never been part of, the hands of province. But you could get one of those feats early that goes with that, to show I have a natural inclination for this. They would be interested in me. And then you could
Mhm.
spend your time in a given campaign leaning towards it. So by the time you're hitting tier 2, you're joining this organization. So now
Mhm.
you're part of this faction, or maybe just having a couple of these seats or a couple of these backgrounds means they're willing to hire your party, so that narrative synergy is there. So we wanted to make a product
Right.
that appeals to both the GMs and the players. And I think we've really found a great set of tools and mechanisms and ways to
Mhm.
write it so that it does just.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's a great tool to use in your session zero. You know, when you're starting to craft, I'm a big fan of, excuse me, I'm a big fan of collaborative world building. And so when my session zeros are very much, how are these characters interrelated? Not you just met in a pub. There's some commonality, some thread possibly that are tying people together. And even if not, tangentially, there's something. And so that way, when you get ready and you roll up on the table and your characters are done, people are stepping into a world that they're familiar with. They know where their character stands. They know where other people's character stands in the game, and I think it facilitates a greater, deeper, thoughtful role play at the table. So, not to get, I got a little sorry, I got on my soapbox.
No, that's right.
No,
Oh, that's okay.
that,
I have a corresponding soapbox, if I may, for a moment.
go for it, Glenn.
My adjacent soapbox is now it should be more exciting than you just met in a pub, and it should be more exciting than, oh, it's a bar fight. But my soapbox is, why is everybody so down on meeting in the tavern? And I say that because in medieval society, the tavern and the inn were the most important building in the community. The barkeep or innkeeper was often the mayor. That's where all of the news came. That's where all of the travelers met. It's where you should meet. Just dress it up.
You're right. There's a guy who did an entire supplement that I interviewed. I forgot his name now, but it was all about, there were like 15 different inns that you can choose to start your adventures in, or that you can put in, that you can drop into your adventures. And I thought it was so brilliant because each one was detailed, had their own set of cast of characters. And there was an corresponding adventure that went along with that. If you wanted to go ahead and kind of do that with whatever was out there. So I'm a big fan of what everyone's doing, and love the fact that you're presenting options for people to go ahead and pull apart and use in whatever capacity in their adventures.
Yeah, I mean, there's a product by Loresmith called Remarkable Inns and Taverns, I think is what the name of it was. That did exactly that. It outlined like 15 buildings that you can again kind of drag and drop in there. And not that we need to give Loresmith any press, because he's doing just fine on his own. But the Loresmith book, Remarkable Cults and Their Followers, was kind of very much part of the background research that we used when we were putting this together. It was one of our reference materials. So we're deeply influenced by his products. And I'm also going to feign ignorance because there's another product I think it's on Kickstarter now. That is, again, it's a tavern, but it's like a 219-page book detailing, it's a tavern and an adventure, but it has all the NPCs. It has like everybody that you would meet there, the patrons that would be there, and all the adventure hooks that they have and everything like that. So yeah, like there's love for the tavern, man. Like that's,
I have an app on my phone that actually has random menus for a tavern at given times.
That's
so
awesome.
when I'm running a game and it happens to come into one, I have a meal that's unique. I don't have to generate it in advance. I hit a button and it's like, bam, they've got roast mutton, honey bread. And
how you play ttrpgs, you have a menu app on your phone.
Or you have the D&D cookbook. I think that,
Well, and I was going to say, and you're a foodie. It's what happens when you're a D&D player and a foodie.
Guilty as charged.
We're also huge fans of collaborative world building too. I mean, that has been something that I've worked into my games for a really, really long time.
Our very first
influenced
book.
by games. Yeah, I mean, our very first book was The Traveler's Guide to Collaborative World Building. Yeah. Kind of about how to bring collaborative world building techniques like you find in like Burning Wheel and Powered by the Apocalypse and stuff like that, how to bring them into largely Dungeons and Dragons, which can sometimes be a little bit kind of like the entry point game for people, right? And so we're trying to be like, okay, how do you make this game more alive? How do you make it feel a little bit more real? How do you make it more collaborative? That kind of thing. I'm glad that the tide is kind of changing, because for so long, like storytellers were like, no, like the story is mine. It's like nobody, nope. I don't need anybody else to go ahead and help me with this, that kind of thing. And I'm glad that attitude is changing, because it's so much more fun for your players when you can kind of bring them into the process. It makes everything just feel more real. So.
And so much more challenging as a storyteller to thread everyone's pieces and interests together instead of just grabbing the reins and running rampant.
It is tough. It's tough. I have two adventures that I'm running right now that are kind of been on hiatus because summer, right? Like, who wants to be inside playing D&D when there's summer? Especially when you live in the Midwest like I do. We get a solid 3 months of good weather, and then the rest of it's dicey.
I live in Maine. Okay, I get it.
Right, but it's one of those things where in my head I have all these ideas that I'm trying to weave together for the characters. And I'm trying to like build ahead of time what I think people are going to be using and things like that. It can be very complicated, but having options and add-ons and modules like what you're creating it takes one less thing off my plate where I don't have to, deal with every NPC name. I mean, I literally have a book with all the NPCs that people meet because I forget, but they always remember.
That's why tools like World Anvil and stuff like that are so important too, because it's like, like wiki pages that you can make for your games. Like, okay, who is this person? That kind of thing.
Right. Exactly.
And all that can get confusing. I mean, as you're trying to keep track of it all, that's part of the reason why we started putting our efforts behind a project like this, to kind of take some of that burden off of the storytellers out there, to take these pieces and say, hey, you don't have to create it all, man. We've got some for you right here. You give it your personal twist,
Right.
and you're ready to go.
And the beauty is, if we've done our jobs correctly, and I do believe we have thus far, and we will continue to do so,
We do pretty good.
the storyteller, the GM, the DM, they are largely in a present role, like you said in a session 0. Here are some of the options. Would any of you like to come from any of these? The bones are right there. Now the player has this. Now they build their character. They build in one of the backgrounds we're talking about. They add in one of the feats we're talking about. They use some of the terminology from this organization, like, the names, like for the Outriders, you're going to have, at a certain levels, they might be called the prosecutores, or what have you. So they might, when they introduce the player now feels, okay, this is me. So now when they're in that opening adventure, and they're introduced, like, what, even if it is at a tavern, it's like, that guy over there, he might be able to help you. He's one of the prosecutores. And now the player's character comes over, sits down at the table and introduces himself. I'm Simon Regius, prosecutores of the Third Legion. And now you've got, and now they're in, right? Now all of a sudden the storyteller has to do a little less for that player, because they're feeling it now, right? They've got a name, they've got a title, they know who they report to. If you end up having to go back to their camp or take him back, like he gets hurt, they have to take him back to the camp for healing. You've got a bunch of stock NPCs ready to go. His sergeant or his legate is there. All these things are present for you.
Right.
But the heavy lifting is done and the players are invested, because now their character matters, not just to themselves, to the other players, to the story. Once you get a player to recognize that their character matters to the story, game, set, match, you're in. You've got engagement, and you're winning all day.
Yep. Well, and what I like about having someone potentially choose a faction is also telegraphs some of the things that you as a DM GM need to be thinking about or need to be working on. So as opposed to having to deal with the entire world, all you have to deal with this piece of the world. Yeah. So it makes things a little bit easier. Kind of, I know for me, it will almost take some weight off my shoulders. Like, okay, now I can write for this. I don't have to write for everything. I like the idea very much. I'm looking forward to when it comes out.
Yeah, so are we. But that's so important too. Like, if you're playing Skyrim and you're doing the College of Whiterun mission, like, you do all of those missions in sequence because it makes sense narratively. You're not jumping around from different missions, because as a player it gets confusing, right? And so it kind of gives them some track and some path for them. So,
absolutely. So we're looking at end of September for the launch of the Kickstarter.
Yep.
And once the Kickstarter kicks off and it finishes, how quickly are people going to be able to get product?
Sure. So the plan is right now, and this is largely kind of based on our last project, right? We, as everyone does when they do a Kickstarter, we vastly underestimated how long it was going to take us to go ahead and turn that one around, in full disclosure. And so we're trying to go ahead and learn lessons from that one, right? What we learned from last one is that it took us about 6 months after the Kickstarter ended to get the final PDF version done. So for people that subscribe at the digital tiers, we're going to be aiming to get it out to them March, April of next year, to go ahead and give us that 6 months to kind of go through things, right? We are also, for the first time, offering a physical book tier. We figured 4th book, it's time to go. I'm a huge backer, like I said, of Kickstarters. I love physical books on my bookshelf. I'm just that cat. So we're offering a physical book tier. book printing right now is weird in the post-pandemic world. It just is. And so we're giving ourselves another 3 months after our PDF deadline to get the physical books out. We don't think it'll take that long. We found a vendor that has a really good turnaround and produces really good content, a really good quality printouts and stuff like that. So we don't think it'll take 3 months, but we're giving us under 3 months for physical books. So that would aim to get out by like July, August of next year.
And on that front, I mean, we're hoping to beat our 6-month
Sure,
turnaround on the PDF too, because while it did take us that long last time, we've learned a lot, as we said, and we're a lot more organized going in this time. But we also don't want to put ourselves in the position of making the awkward apologies like we did last time. So we're calling it the 6 months and hoping it's 4.
It's effectively the Scotty method of content creation. But I would also say that one of the brilliant things that Josh really brought to this project already was we did some test prints on other projects we did earlier this year, so that we got a good idea of the turnaround time. We really understand the cost, the budgeting involved, all of that back of the house work that needs to be done to make things go smoother. That's why we're able to say today that we found a printer, then we're confident in what they're able to do. Knock on wood, as long as things stay the same.
Right.
A lot of that.
The Subclasses of Dragonlance booklet was gorgeous.
Yeah, a lot of that heavy lifting was already done, and it was actually done with that group, and we were so pleased with that. There are future projects to get other things that we've done that are able to be printed and sold differently, sold in that method, and we're so proud of what we've got coming and how good things look as far as our ability to get print. We're also including a retailer's tier. So we're encouraging people to back. If you're going to like this product and you're going to back us, awesome. But also talk to your local game stores. Let them come in, put a couple of these books, or more than a couple of these books, a dozen or 15, I don't know, on their shelves. I mean, shoot the whole wad. Go for an even 25. Do what you got to
Baker's done.
do. It'll be good. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. But get those into those local shops, because and that was a really big thing for all three of us, because we love our local stores, and it was very hard because I have such a close relationship going back to 1978 with my local game store.
It was a good year.
So because I have such a close relationship with them, when we sell things that are only digital, I always have that pang of guilt. Like, man, I want to be able to do something that they have access to, whether they do or not, that's their choice. But I want them to be able to have access to it. And so it was very important that we could get to this tier on this project so that local game stores can be supported. They don't have to be afraid of Kickstarter. They don't have to be afraid of independent content creators and what we do, because we're here for them also. And I think that's an important step. And we hope that backers of Tabletop Journeys in whatever capacity understand that, feel that, agree with that, and make decisions within their means, but accordingly with that.
Yeah, again, your friendly local game store is a great place to get stuff. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't get it there. So, hopefully, with the new production of physical books and things like that, you can go ahead and slide a couple on their shelves.
That's what we're hoping. Yeah,
Absolutely, because if you can support your local game store,
you should.
Please do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, I really appreciate you coming on. I can't wait to see the physical product when it comes out. Keep me updated. I'd love to hear more. I need to look at that Soul Society, because that sounds like, that's for me.
It's bang of fun. Like, I've been working on this one for over a year in its pieces and parts. And I actually just came up with like 3, in addition to adventure starters, I have like 4 adventure hooks that I've got going, and I might just write them up all as adventure starters, and then the team will decide which one goes in the book, and then we might have additional products down the road, because I love this group. Love it. Love it.
You wrote the Soul Society, Lewinika. Why don't you give the dime tour about what the Soul Society is?
Oh, yeah. So the Soul Society is really this group that's based on archival knowledge, right? They are the ones that are going back. They're looking into history. They're finding the ancient text, the ancient scrolls, the old magic items, when Aslan talks about he was there when the old magics were written, they're the ones that are going back and finding those clues. It is kind of like my homage to Indiana Jones, the librarians, the Meisters from Game of Thrones. It's kind of a lot of all of that combined. And the idea is there's so much adventure within that. If you could play the adventuring character who's literally going through the jungle to find the ancient information,
The Indiana Jones version.
or you could be that textbook person who's doing the deep research for the king or what have you during a game that focuses on political intrigue. Or maybe you're the patron for a party of players who are going out and taking on various tasks for this society. Or maybe the society is after something that could destroy a community and you're playing a party of characters that's in opposition to the society. There's just so many ways this could go. Rogue members of the society could want to do all kinds of things or misuse items that are in their libraries or in their control. There's so many ways this could go. And for me, it's all flavor. It is literally probably one of the most flavorful things that I've written in recent history.
It sounds like it's right up my alley. I think I chose the right faction.
Absolutely.
When do I get my badge?
Well, funny you mentioned that.
So funny story.
Yeah.
We're actually reviewing art submissions for the emblems for each faction right now. That's one of the things that we wanted to secure for the art piece, because that emblem, that badge, that heraldry, that sigil is a huge amount of the flavor that goes into a faction, and everybody wants to know what crest they're wearing on their shirt.
Yeah, it's super important. I mean, and then the fact that you could potentially 3D design and print them would be kind of interesting.
We should do pins, actually. We hadn't thought about that, but we should do pins.
That is a good idea.
I think so. It's a really good
I was
idea.
thinking for the Soul Society, could you imagine having a wax seal with their sigil on it, and you could just do a little wax thing on the letter and then deliver it like that? I'm just saying.
No, I mean,
it's the storyteller who's at the convention that hands out the letters with the Soul Society seal on it.
Yeah.
People will remember
I mean, and that also harkens back to the days when we played around the table.
Yeah.
You know,
and you had like props that you created, letters that you
coins.
wrote.
Oh, I miss that.
Oh gosh, I remember in Rips, I actually took a letter, wrote it out in full, then took it out back and strategically burned it. So
sure.
Only certain information was left, and had it preserved in a plastic bag as a gift.
Artificially aging paper using tea,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally done that.
I was there when those old magics were
bake it in the dampen it, bake it in the oven so it gets that little brown.
It's a little curl.
Baste it with a little oil so it browns up or whatnot else. Yeah.
I learned calligraphy for this. I actually learned calligraphy so I could write out all these details.
Nice.
I wasn't very good at it, but players don't
Still added something though.
I did. It had something. All right.
I was pretty good at matching a script in Word and then aging the paper after it was printed out. Like I'd print it out on.
So you just said you were pretty good at typing.
Yeah. My calligraphy skills are not world renowned. Well, they are probably world renowned as being terrible.
Yeah.
So you do what you can do.
Yeah. Well, this sounds great. I can't wait to get a chance to take a look at it myself. I'm sure we will talk before the Kickstarter as we get some more updates and things like that. But I appreciate you guys coming back on. I feel like this won't be the only visit you'll have here. But thank you for spending part of your Sunday afternoon with me, and I wish you the best of luck.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having us again, Mike. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Mike.